Welcome to the latest episode of Gowling WLG's Global Intellectual Property Podcast, where we discuss a range of topics to help you protect your brands, creations and inventions.
Hello and welcome to our annual London Design Festival podcast. I'm John Coldham and I'm Head of Brands and Designs here at the law firm Gowling WLG. I'm proud to say that it is now 10 years since we were first asked by the London Design Festival to put on an event as part of the festival, and we have covered so many different topics, from how to protect your designs and asking whether it's ever good to be copied, through to exploring 3D printing and looking at multi-generational living, to name but a few. We are a leading law firm in intellectual property and particularly in design law. In fact, I'm honoured to say that we have won the award for the best design law firm in the UK for the past 4 years running. We've always believed that it's really important for designers to understand how to protect their designs. It's one of the main reasons that the London Design Festival got us involved in the first place. And so instead of talking about the law today, I just want to mention that we have produced a newly updated guide on design law for non-lawyers, which introduces a lot of the concepts and ideas behind how to protect your innovation in what we hope is a user-friendly guide. This and podcasts from previous years of this event are all available on our dedicated website at gowlingwlg.com/designs for life. But as I've said already, this podcast isn't about us or about the law. It's about gathering together a panel of people who work in the world of design and asking them to share their experiences. This year, for our 10th anniversary of running this event, we are focusing on perhaps the most important issue of them all. How can we reconcile the love of getting new things with the increasingly urgent need to take better care of our planet? By coincidence, we are recording this podcast as the COP27 conference draws to a close, and the focus on the importance of living more sustainably is stronger than ever. It's time to be bold and make changes to the world we live in. It's my view that design is at the core of that. To explore this, we have assembled together a wonderful panel of guests, so without further ado, please let me introduce them to you. First of all, we have Minnie Moll, who is Chief Executive of the Design Council. Soon after joining the Design Council, Minnie launched their Design for Planet mission to help address the climate crisis. Minnie spent numerous years working in innovation, design, advertising and brand consulting, and was voted the Vistage UK Business Leader of the Year in 2020. Minnie has been the ambassador for responsible business in the east of England for Prince Charles, as he then was, and since joining the Design Council has been at the inner sanctum, the so-called blue zone, where all the world leaders are allowed to go, at COP26 in Glasgow. Minnie has an excellent oversight of the whole world of design, but we're also joined by some other wonderful speakers who operate in different parts of that world. Part of the problem with design is that new products generally need packaging, particularly in a world of e-commerce. Representing big business that historically has used a lot of plastic, we have Trystan Farnworth, who until recently was Sustainability Director for Britvic PLC, where he produced and implemented the company's sustainability strategy, both in the UK and internationally, and is now focused on Britvic's Beyond the Bottle business unit, which is looking at creating a future for soft drinks that does not require so much plastic. Trystan will talk to us about their Aqua Libra business and its pioneering products. Natalie Davis is Managing Director of EGI, a company that specialises in the design and manufacturing of sustainable packaging solutions. Natalie will talk you through what these products are, but the particular reason I'm delighted that Natalie is on our panel today is that her company is living proof that you can make sustainable products that are better than the plastic alternatives, are still affordable, and they actually open doors that you cannot open with less sustainable solutions. So much so that Natalie's product was ripped off by a competitor, and so the reason I know Natalie is that we helped her through a hard-fought design infringement case earlier this year. Challenging the notion of whether we need new products at all, I'm delighted to welcome Gemma Perry, who is the founder and owner of design studio House of Solace, situated in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham. Gemma is a bespoke jeweller with a specialism in the redesign of quality pieces and upcycling jewellery, making products from waste material. Gemma's company has been a finalist at the National Wedding Awards for the best wedding jewellers in the country, which is no mean feat. So let's go around the room, and could I just ask each of you just to explain where you're coming at the issue of sustainability and what it means for you. Minnie, should we start with you?
Yeah, so to really zoom out for a second, I think I would say that everyone in the design community needs to have a combination of urgency and hope. The point you made about this is the biggest challenge of our lifetimes. It's very, very real. The science is saying we are running out of time. And designers and innovation, they're different, but they're very interlinked, has been part of what got us here. You know, it has been us encouraging excessive consumption, the way that that has impacted, and we've used the finite resources of the planet and the impact that it's now had. So design has been a huge part of the problem, and it has to be part of the solution, hence the Design for Planet mission. And so really the mission is actually about equipping designers and anyone who's commissioning design to really put planet at the heart of what they do. There's a lot of very technical stuff about circularity, modularity, upcycling, you know, thinking about waste in totally different ways. So there's a lot of quite technical stuff, but there's an enormous amount as well, which is about urgency and attitude. And final thing I'll say at this point is design has huge power, and with power comes responsibility. So I think there's a real responsibility for anyone designing or commissioning design to put planet at the heart of it.
I think that's right. We'll come back to a bit more about what that means and what you've been doing in a bit. But Trystan, why don't you tell us a bit about you?
Yeah. So I work for a company called Aqua Libra, which is owned by Britvic soft drinks, who are a kind of FTSE 250 business in the UK. I guess the brands you'll know us for will be brands like Pepsi, 7-Up, Robinsons, J2O, etc. So I suppose on the sort of front page headlines of Britvic every day will be the conversation around packaging, because that's almost like the poster child for sustainability in the world of soft drinks. But I guess it is clearly a lot more than that, in that is only one part of it. So the other elements that are really key to us are obviously carbon, especially, and also water, which sounds a bit strange, but obviously to make a litre of soft drinks takes more than 1 litre of water to make it. So we do use a lot of water in our production as well. So I guess where we are is working on all those things, investing significantly behind all of them. I think from our point of view, I think what's interesting is, one is the science sort of keeps moving around, so keeping pace with what is genuinely right to do long term and not is a bit of a moving feast. The other bit is obviously the constant tension between wanting to do the right thing and being able to afford to do the right thing, and what consumers are willing to pay for to do the right thing. Because I guess what consumers sometimes say they're willing to pay for, and then what they do pay for are two different things. I think where all this nuts out at, though, for us is I think we're probably not that many years away from getting to a place where, on our current business infrastructure, you might get to a place where you feel like you're kind of doing all you can within what you've got. So a good example of that would be the implementation of deposit return schemes, for example. So that obviously gets a lot more recycled content in the system, etc. But I guess the big question for us, which kind of goes beyond maybe the 10-year horizon, is kind of where do soft drinks go beyond that? Because the soft drinks model has been pretty fixed ever since soft drinks was invented, which is, you know, drinks are made in factories, they're then shipped around, and then they're consumed, and they're transported in a form of packaging. So I guess the kind of more revolutionary aspect that we're looking at is kind of what is that world beyond packaging altogether. So looking at what we would call a world beyond the bottle, where in effect the soft drinks factory can be, you know, if we can get soft drinks manufacturing technology to a size and a quality where it can be made on the premises, be it a pub or a restaurant or a shop or a home, that clearly takes out a lot of transport, a lot of water, etc., etc. So I guess that's the ultimate jump for us, is to move to a future which is truly beyond the bottle, where actually the quantity of carbon, water and resources that we use would fundamentally step change. But I think we've got to work on that, because all the current solutions that we're kind of adopting will only get us so far, and I think the job is then to go and do something completely different, which obviously means essentially completely dismantling the infrastructure of an industry and rebuilding a new one. I guess that's the challenge that we've got, but I think that's the exciting bit. Whether it takes 25, 50, 75, 100 years to get there, we absolutely see the future going beyond the bottle. So soft drinks will be, I think, a very, very different industry in 50 years' time to what it is now.
That's fascinating. We'll find out more about that in a minute as well. Natalie, you transport bottles as part of your job, so
yes,
tell us a bit about your position.
But not plastic ones generally. Most of our packaging is, of course, for glass and liquids and tins. In fact, our business started really right down at the fundamentals of sustainability. It was to create a product that replaced plastic. And the product needed to be using recycled material and fully recyclable. And that's what we do. We have moulded fibre, which is effectively waste cardboard, which is what we mainly use, but it is newspapers, newsprint, magazines, paper that everyone throws away. It's pulped and moulded into new products. Now, it's known to most people as egg boxes because they're really in everyone's supermarket shopping basket. And then we've taken it a step further to be protective packaging. It is being used a lot more now, but mainly what it replaced when we started was polystyrene. One of our initial customers was actually using another type of foam that was a known carcinogen, was toxic, and we said, this is madness, you can't use that. It's dangerous once in your warehouses, but two, how does the customer get rid of it? All of us as consumers, we hate it when we get a box that's full of polystyrene. It takes up our black bin that only gets emptied, quite rightly, every 2 weeks. So we went down the lines of moulded fibre. We already had created a product of moulded fibre and made it recyclable, made it reusable, made it waterproof and everything that it needed to be. So we knew there was scope to be able to do it, and we designed and initially implemented our paint tin packaging, so for transfer of paint online to the consumer, and then have gone on to create more specialist packaging for drinks. So we do a whole plethora of packaging from small cans like we have here and small bottles up to your big Magnum bottles and several Magnum bottles of champagne in a box. It's quite challenging at times, especially when you've got customers. Obviously design now, people have the difference of, there's so many different gins of having a different bottle, and we know that they've got a very heavy gold top in it, which obviously changed the dynamics of the bottle in its packaging to which way it would drop and fall if it was dropped. And because people are designing different bottles and things to make their product stand out, our packaging has to encompass all of that, but whilst not having to make lots of different tooling, which again isn't sustainable if you're making new tooling for every different product someone comes out with. So there's challenges to that, but it's great because at the end of the day, our product is made from waste. It can be recycled, it can be reused, it can be composted, it can be used for lots of different things. And we also encourage our customers, some of ours will send a product, say a paint tin out to a customer, and then they want to return it. You can reuse our packaging very simply to return it. And we do often say to our customers, if it's not torn or broken, reuse it. It can be reused a number of times before it needs to be either recycled or composted. So another product that we also do with another business of ours, again, was replacing plastic. And it's always where possible for the same price or less than plastic, because when we started the other business, it was back in 2013 that we launched it, sustainability wasn't like it is now. People weren't aware of it. It has taken us a long time to get to the forefront, and people now chasing for the product. But that's, again, it's a tree guard, and when anyone plants new trees, we put in new motorways or we put in new train lines, we plant lots of trees and we wrap them in plastic, and then we leave the plastic there and it stays there for millions of years. So we created a tree guard that basically will biodegrade in, depending on whether it's a hedge or tree, between 2 and 3 years or 4 and 5 years, and it will just disappear and go completely back to nature. So again, being sustainable right from the start all the way through in everything that we do.
I love that product. I think it's brilliant. I wish I was planting a forest to need one.
I have some with me.
Thank you. Well, I'll bear it in mind. Gemma.
Hello. So I'm Gemma. So I'm literally I have a jewellery company in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham. Obviously, years ago, the jewellery quarter was a very industrial area, and that's how jewellery was made. Big machinery, and I've got to admit, sustainability wasn't even a thing until probably about 11 years ago, when fair trade gold came into play. And people actually didn't necessarily want to think about fair trade gold. They were just thinking, it's just whatever, it's going to go away, and we won't need to deal with that, because we didn't know what was actually happening kind of in the world, or what was going to happen in future. I obviously came into the jewellery industry about 7 years ago, when I was doing fine jewellery, and I identified that actually there is other things that we can do when jewellery's already been made and everything like that, to actually work with customers and clients and actually produce pieces of jewellery that actually have already been made and redesign them into something else. So I'm not necessarily having to go down the route of having very core or raw metal, precious metals, gold, platinum, whatever. And I can actually utilise those to produce things and make my clients happy, producing and designing and everything like that, with their pieces that they didn't necessarily want. So I think it's a really good thing in jewellery, and I'm really quite passionate about it, that I think it's the thing that we do need to go down in sort of the industry. And I suppose that's what brings me here today, talking about it. So yes, that's what I do really. So I do redesign for clients. 65 to 70% of my work that I do now is down that route of redesigning. So I'm not necessarily going and buying brand new gold and things like that.
And presumably, it's not. Presumably, sustainability might be part of the message or what customers want, but partly, presumably, it's. And we were talking about this before the podcast recording started, of how actually it has more connection with the people bringing their parents' rings in or things like that, so that actually there's more sentimental value in the product if you've made something old like that into a new thing, rather than starting from scratch. Presumably, it's actually more attractive. The sustainability might be driving the business model, but actually you're making a product that's better than it would have been otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sentimental, especially obviously we have just come out of COVID, and unfortunately, people did lose people in COVID. So I am having a lot of people come with literally ridiculous amounts of jewellery that go, actually I want to make this, or want to make this into a variety of pieces. So I can pass them down to my children and things like that. So it brings more, it's got a bigger story to tell than just me going, well, you can have that diamond, I can put it into that mount, I can cast it, and it can be done within 2 weeks. So it actually has a whole story to tell. And that's what I really enjoy. Yeah,
for me, that's part of what sustainability's had a difficult journey over the years, because I remember from being a kid of the 80s and 90s, there's always been a pressure on the environment. I remember working out whether a can was steel or aluminium, so whether it could be recycled and all that. There's always been a drive to help the environment, but it's how that translates into real life and actually people making more sustainable choices. And for me, the language about that until more recently has always been about compromise. It's either going to be more expensive or not as good, or something else. But the stories around this table even already are, it's better, and it doesn't necessarily have to be more expensive. In fact, it may even be cheaper. But it's moving the world. That's how you move the world beyond, dialogue to actually real change. And I suppose my next question on my sheet in front of me is what challenges do you see in getting the public to actually do what they want to do? If you do polls, it seems to be that people want to make more sustainable choices, but then when they're standing in the supermarket or the business is choosing which packaging to use for their mail order company, they're not necessarily always making those choices, because actually, we're in an economic squeeze at the moment. There are realities that go beyond the lovely theories of doing the right thing. So maybe Natalie, you can go first. Of what problems have you seen? Have you seen any, or is it just a universal love of your product? But are there any challenges competing with less sustainable options that you've seen?
There are. It does always come down to price. And I was having this conversation with Trystan earlier that people have to look at the bigger picture, and this has been going on for years from other packaging that we have done prior to the liquids packaging, is that whilst sometimes at the point of purchase the item might be slightly more expensive, when you look at the bigger picture, so our products are very quick to pack compared to a lot of the competition. An example being something that you would fill with air, that you've got the process of creating that by filling it with air, you need the machines and everything else that go along with it. Ours, you simply need the inserts. So whilst the plastic filled with air is cheaper as an item, actually when you put in all the other parts of it, and especially the labour time, it's actually more expensive than our product. So that's our biggest challenge with the large companies, is that getting them to look at the bigger picture. We had it a long time ago with another big customer that it was going to save them £5 million as a business, but the one person buying it, it was going to affect his bonus, so he didn't want to do it. And it's really getting everyone on board to say, no, actually, for a business, this is the right thing to do. Not only is it sustainable, but it's saving a lot of money, but we need to, support this person on their bonus. They're still going to get their bonus, even though they're not going to hit their targets money-wise. And that's the biggest thing that we come up against.
And actually, Trystan, that brings us quite nicely back to you, because you are trying to create a revolution within an industry that's been, as I'm going to use my own words, stuck in its ways for a very long time, and you are trying to create a short-term evolution and a longer-term revolution, if I can put it like that. But you must be, I'm not asking you to name names or anything, but you must be seeing some resistance, not necessarily within your enlightened company, but maybe within the industry, that actually, keep doing what we do. Change is expensive. So, and indeed, you might have people within their own business. How are you incentivizing people or encouraging the industry that they've got to change?
Yeah. So, I think I've not come across anybody in the industry who doesn't want to change. But I think obviously the questions, particularly when you're making things on a big scale, is obviously there's a big infrastructure down in place already, so there's big capital spends of tens of millions of pounds, and obviously that infrastructure is designed to last for a long time, and therefore sometimes the question is, we've made that investment 2 years ago, it was meant to see us through for 20 years, and now we're suggesting that we should do something different with that infrastructure. That's obviously the tricky bit, but I think from an incentive point of view, certainly we as a company, and this is quite common in most big companies now, is that there would be ESG targets in people's bonus now, which is becoming increasingly chunkier part of remuneration packages. So but if you don't do the right thing, you don't get your full remuneration. So that's becoming increasingly common. From a consumer point of view, things I was going to mention was, and you mentioned it well in the setup, was this. Consumers don't want to compromise. So I think certainly as a brand owner, we've got to do everything possible to bring solutions to consumers and to the trade where they don't have to compromise. Because if you ask people to compromise something, naturally the take-up's going to be less. So if you can remove the element of compromise, that it makes it very easy. It's like, well, if this costs the same as that and it's better, why wouldn't I? And as soon as you're in that place, that's good. As soon as you've got a barrier, clearly it's harder. So I think that's just something we've got to get through. I think the other bit is consumer habit, though, and I think this is the element of where sometimes change, and I think you mentioned, Natalie, sometimes change can take years to come, but then all of a sudden it can come really, really quickly. And I guess certainly in the world where I'm spending all the time now in hospitality, actually, going back a few years ago and staying in an expensive hotel and being willing to not have your sheets changed every day or have your towels changed every day and would have seemed quite strange and unacceptable, but now it is totally unacceptable because it just becomes normal. So I think there's a lot of consumer habits, and I think consumer habits can sometimes change faster than we give consumers credit for. And then the final bit on cost would be, for me, it's never just about cost. Cost is always relative to something else. Yeah. So I guess one of the good things about inflation is that it forces businesses to think very differently about resource use. Yeah, because part of the problem with plastic was it was incredibly cheap for a very, very long period of time. So that's what it was. As soon as you get movements in resources, particularly sharp upward movements, it makes everybody think about everything again. And we're seeing that, for example, in glass at the moment as well. So glass has advantages, but it's incredibly carbon heavy. So I think, as soon as you get big jolts in costs relative to something else, that forces businesses to think differently in a way they haven't previously before. So so I think, you know, don't get to a place where we have to compromise, make getting into habits easy, and have the foresight and bravery to sometimes bank on the fact that if you take the raw facts of populations growing and resources are fixed, ultimately, then inevitably resources get more expensive over time. So quite often, if you take a long-term view on something, the ROI is usually better than you would bank on.
Yeah, that's a good insight. Minnie, how about you? You've got a sort of a more of a helicopter view, I suppose. So tell us a bit more about your programme, because presumably part of that is moving people into wanting to make those sustainable choices a reality.
Yeah. So I absolutely echo the kind of three things of affordable, easy, and attractive. You know, you have to do those things. And actually, one zoomed out view is actually sort of three levels at which people need to be operating. And one is at the sort of governmental legislation level, where we need to remove obstacles and blockers that are not making it a level playing field. So there are some blockers there where people, certainly some of the smaller organisations and larger, that are trying to do the right thing. There are blockers that make it not a level playing field, which means that their products seem disproportionately really expensive. So there's the policy work that needs to happen. Then this is a very personal view. I do think businesses and brands are the really, really important piece in the middle, because businesses and brands are, that's where things are created, products, services, places where you live. And so the drive there has absolutely got to be key. And then there is that third piece, which is the people power, the behaviour thing. And I think that I really agree with Trystan that actually behaviour can change quite quickly. And that's where we do need, and I mean this in the old sense of the word, influencers, leaders, people who inspire others and educate others. And it's where we all have to be the change we want to see in the world. And keep reminding our friends, our family, and ourselves doing our best. So, it's not all governments and businesses' job. There is a very real personal responsibility as well. One other thing I just wanted to pick up on, and this is an example of infrastructure, fantastic designer called Phoebe English, who spoke at our Design for Planet event last week. And she's doing really amazing work where all of her material is dead stock. Lots of it is really quite small offcuts and what have you. And she's doing amazing work, but there is no infrastructure to be able to get hold of dead stock and offcuts. So she's had to kind of create her own, which has taken ages, phoning people up. Can we have all your scraps rather than them going in landfill? But she's getting it kind of going. But if there was an actual infrastructure to be able to make dead stock and scraps accessible, it was just one example that's meant, goodness, she had to be determined to make that happen. There's lots and lots and lots of examples where systems and infrastructure have been the same for decades, and we need to change them.
You're right. I mean, reusing materials, you must find this as well. Sometimes if it's not a customer who's brought something in, reusing materials can be a more expensive way of buying.
Yeah, so infrastructure is really good. That hits the nail on the head in jewellery as well. So sometimes we'll have a client come in and wants, 4 or 5 pieces, and then I find that actually I haven't got as much gold when I'm melting down stuff to be able to meet that. So it's actually finding, making the decision, do I go and get some clean gold? It's classed as clean gold, and it's obviously not dirty, but it's obviously reused gold. But it's either do I go and get a bit of clean gold and I melt it in with the bits that I've melted down just because I need some more gold to make what I'm doing, or do I go and get some scrap from the bullion? So we have bullion dealers and everything like that. But actually, that's not a thing that people go and do. So me to go to a bullion dealer who's actually buying the bullion in to make the money, and there's me going, can I have some of your scrap? It doesn't make sense. Well, to them it wouldn't make sense, but to me it does. And so the infrastructure, I think, is really, really a really important thing, and definitely does need to be developed, in jewellery, I think. So, yeah, so I do have some
That's
slight
your expansion
issues.
plan.
Yes, that is the expansion. Like straight away, I'm like, that is definitely something that I really, really like, and it is something that I do come across quite a lot, because people do want to keep that sentimental. They do want to keep. There's no point sort of trying to do half, because it kind of defeats the whole object of me trying to be sustainable in what I'm doing. You know, reducing the amount of machinery that I'm using, and yet I'm about to go and buy something that has just gone through a whole big machinery or a whole big process that is creating a lot of waste or environmental waste. So yeah, and also like time as well. So time, I sometimes think, is a big issue with it, because it takes longer for me to make a piece. But people like the experience, and I feel like actually society and in general, people are liking experiences and things. They liking education. They like to be educated about what's going on. So I do spend a lot of my time educating how things are done, what I'm about to do with their pieces and things like that. And I do feel like that is something that we need to kind of promote as well, because I think the more that people know, the more that they want to do good, to sort of sustainable things.
I think that goes into the point about how you bring consumers along on the journey, and you see this a bit in the food industry with where your cabbage has come from, if it's been flown around the world versus if it's come from another farm in Hertfordshire or whatever. And I think you're right. If people see that on the wall of the shop, they're more likely to be engaged with it than if it just happens to be from Hertfordshire. If you're taking them on the journey there, I think that's good.
Can I just add something? Because I wrote this down. This is something someone said at our event last week. Is that, of course, what happens when things are changing and whole systems need to change? Opportunity. And lovely language that was used last week about right now the opportunity for waste entrepreneurs. So I love this idea of people now being really smart to become waste entrepreneurs. Better language, or contemporary alchemists. Ooh. Isn't that a lovely phrase? So I'm a contemporary alchemist, as in I'm just seeing all this waste and how to use it in different ways.
Yeah, amazing. It's amazing how you can sell things through branding.
Yeah.
Going back to your roots there. So we talked about how sustainable products can be better. Natalie, your product is arguably better than a lot of the less sustainable alternatives. So I'd like to think some of the people listening to this podcast are designers, and they may be designers who are in an industry where eco is what they do. In which case it's easier to make sustainable choices. But they may be not in an industry that is that, and they are just designing something more every day. You've seen this in the past, you've seen the eco businesses, and then you've got what I would call, probably in a historical anachronism now, ordinary businesses. And it's harder to make the eco choices when that's breaking the mould. Like Trystan was saying, in your industry, it's not historically been like that. What would you say, each of you, to designers who are trying to make more sustainable choices in a world where they're maybe not in that industry?
I would say look, because, speaking earlier, Minnie, when you said about, is it Phoebe English who is finding scraps? So I think traditionally, I guess people don't use scraps, but she's now looking for an alternative. And I think that was exactly what we did. The first reason we came up with the tree guard was because my parents happened to have bought a load of hedge plants, and they got supplied with plastic spirals. And we got them and we thought, why on earth are we planting a hedge and then wrapping it in plastic? And to add to that, we're going to cut down another tree to make a stake to support the tree we're planting. This just seems completely mad. So that was when we already had the experience, obviously, of pulp and recycled material, and said, could we do this? Let's have a go. And I think it's let's have a go and look for alternatives. We now use bamboo. Bamboo is commonly used, thin bamboo poles for hedge plants, but we then found a much heavier duty grade of bamboo. It's a grass, it gets harvested every 3 to 5 years, and it keeps growing. So instead of cutting down a tree, we use a heavy duty bamboo to support the trees. And it's looking and researching, going out there. If it's not the norm, it doesn't mean to say it's not possible. So I think it is thinking outside the box.
Trystan, what would you have to say on that?
It's difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because I think every circumstance is different. But I think, I think there's kind of definitely thinking outside the box. I think sometimes there's just kind of thinking inside the box as well, in terms of sometimes this stuff is really obvious, and I kind of, because I think if you take the fundamentals of population's going to keep growing, resources are finite, stuff's going to get more expensive, and therefore a lot of sustainability is how can we use less in a way which doesn't mean that consumers have to compromise. So I think sometimes the answers are really easy. It's just that they're not immediately obvious to us. So certainly on the Aqua Libra brand, which I'm kind of working on at the moment, the idea of saying, can the way that we make soft drinks be compressed and shrunk effectively so it takes less space? Do big offices have a square metre to be able to put a mini soft drinks factory? And yes, they have. And do Britvic want to enter the water market in a big way, in a different way? Yes, we do. Well, and it's fairly easy, isn't it? That leads us to the immediate conclusion of we should do what we're doing. That is all dead logical and easy and straightforward. It's just that it's not the most obvious thing. The most obvious thing is, if you want to enter the water brand, we have to go and buy another plastic line, and then you have to go and source a spring water or a mineral water. That's the obvious thing to do. So I think sometimes this stuff is dead straightforward and logical. It's just not immediately obvious. And I think sometimes it's just about stepping back and thinking hard about, just trying to think logically sometimes.
And you talked about how your business is going through sort of the revolution in the longer term, but the sort of you're doing the little things that you can do in the shorter term. How are you encouraging your designers to make those changes now, or to think more sustainably even in the very short term?
Yeah. So I think in terms of almost like, the hygiene factors of the minimum standards that you would want from suppliers generally, including designers. Obviously, we have like increasingly strict standards around what we will and won't tolerate. Yeah. So I think, in terms of sustainability, so I think that probably goes without saying. I think what we're finding is on the more game-changing solutions, again, we often have to work with suppliers that we haven't worked with before. So often the more innovative solutions won't be in the traditional big suppliers. It will be in the smaller, more innovative suppliers who are kind of dabbling at things, for want of a better word. So I think cultivating partnerships and contact networks in typically smaller businesses outside your core business is often where we kind of get the best ideas.
And presumably that's encouraging everybody to think a bit more along those lines, because competition is what makes the world go round. And if you are, as a big company, using your influence to go to smaller companies who are doing a better job of it, it's going to make some of the bigger suppliers think again.
Definitely. Design is a highly, highly creative but also fragmented industry. So I think the opportunity for designers to help bigger companies make a big difference is enormous and probably hugely untapped.
Interesting. Minnie, how does the designer listening to this make more sustainable choices on the sort of day-to-day while still keeping joyful products coming to us?
So I think that language is so important, and having worked in an innovation company for quite some time, I actually think that for years innovation has been really driven by new. It's the faster, smaller, new, and I actually think we really need to sort of rethink innovation, and I think it should be better, not new, because actually some of the most interesting innovation right now is really novel things like weighing something out and putting it into a paper bag. Some of the stuff that we need to be doing now is really old school. It's really, really old school. And the circularity and designing with nature, and sort of, guess what? It's what we used to do, and it's what indigenous populations have continued to do in a most ingenious way, in harmony with nature. So I think there's a piece for designers to really actually stop and think, is if you had virtually nothing to do this with, and you really were trying to design with nature, what might that look like? And I've just remembered, here's a quote from an amazing designer at our event last week. I thought this was really provocative, and he said that designers actually need to think more about people and the impact on the planet than about their own creative experience. And this thing that I thought was so deep in that was like, not just about doing something that's new and excites you. You actually need to put planet and people before your own kind of personal kick, which I was like, whoa, quite an interesting thought for a designer. So really stopping to think about if Planet was at the table, if Planet was at the briefing session, what would Planet be saying about this brief you're about to get stuck in on?
Do you think there's a way of making it work where, obviously, some would say that's all very well and good, but you've still got to be able to sell it and get it past those who maybe wrongly don't care about the planet so much. There are, the bean counters who care about the profit margin. There are the people we talked about individual people's bonuses earlier. You've got a lot of people who may agree with the macro, but not when it's actually their decision on that day in order to agree with it, or indeed what the consumer wants. It may be, we talked a minute ago about it still needing to be joyful. So how do you keep Planet at the table while still making sure that it gets past all those hurdles?
And I so get that. I know that loads and loads of designers in the design economy in the UK are working on their own or in very small SMEs. Most of designers, and that they have bills to pay. I get that, but I think that you have to push at the brief stage. 80% of the environmental impact of any new product is determined in the design stage. 80%. You have really got to challenge the brief as much as you can. A lot of people are not in a position to turn the brief away. You've got to challenge it. But increasingly, back to this point about business, increasingly any decent business these days has got to be thinking about their own footprint, has got to be thinking about their reputation, has got to be thinking about the impact that they're having. So increasingly, it shouldn't be so much pushing water uphill. But you have to make the change that you can. I'm not naive enough to think that everyone can just turn briefs away if the client doesn't have a strong enough sustainability agenda. And then I think that's where some of the new organisations are most exciting, because they haven't got legacy. They haven't got legacy, and they haven't got huge investment in infrastructure. And that's a very real challenge in an organisation. So they're starting from scratch, and that's where it's, in some respects, easier to just go straight in to something that's got real sustainability at the heart of it.
And Gemma, as the designer here, what inspired you to go down this road as opposed to what presumably would have been an easier road of just buying your clean gold and making stuff to order? What was the prompt?
I think it is just been maybe my age, been growing up with actually talking about climate change, talking about all that kind of thing, that thing being on the news, and me wanting a business that is, I want to be at the forefront of that, because it's actually something that I will admit it, unfortunately in the jewellery industry is still sometimes is put to one side, because it's a little bit hard, because we haven't done sort of all the research of what we need to do. We're definitely going down the right route, but we're not there yet. So when you start talking to sort of the older sort of businesses or the bigger businesses, they're a bit like, yeah, we're doing this, we do fair trade, we do this, we do that. We've got like if we go right back to like the mining and things like that. But actually, how much are they doing? And I think for me, I want to be at the forefront, to be like, okay, we need to push boundaries. Yeah. And I think that's what keeps me going, and be like, well, I could do the easy option, but actually I want to go down this route, because in future and sort of longevity, this is the way that we need to go.
And that's a great point, actually. That's about the fact that actually we don't have to encourage these designers, because lots of designers, that's the way they want to go. And I think increasingly that I'm glad to say that's the way it is. Natalie, you were shocked by the plastic that arrived, and that's what prompted you guys to go down that road. It wasn't any motivation other than doing the right thing.
It's really rewarding as well to realise right at the start. I've always been a big fan of the seas, and I saw islands. I think it's quite well known about the Maldives that there is one island that is literally just a big garbage tip. It's shocking to see, and that's all created by us. And then over there was an island, it was full of dead birds, and you could see that where their bodies had decomposed, inside was plastic bottle tops and plastic clips and things, because they consumed them. And I think it's been widely advertised, the turtle with a plastic straw up its nose. Luckily we banned those now, but I saw all of that and I thought, this is ridiculous. We cannot continue this. We are destroying what we've got. We're destroying ourselves, because that all ends up back in our water courses and back in our bodies. So we don't do something at the start, at the source, to stop it getting there, then to be fair, we're all doomed. So it's really exciting, actually, and rewarding, doing something that's not hurting everything else.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's almost like Gemma saw my sheet of questions when she just covered a topic a moment ago, and that topic is you guys are all doing the right thing and pushing the agenda, and that's why you're sat around this table today recording this podcast. But there are lots of companies that have jumped on the sustainability bandwagon. We as a law firm have seen it through sometimes acting for the good guys, sometimes less so, where people have been accused of greenwashing. You know, they are saying they're doing the right thing, and in fact, they might be doing a little bit, but they're exaggerating at best, or maybe making it up at worst, or implying that their product, which may be very environmentally friendly, is saving the planet in a way that it's not saving the planet, it's just not harming it as badly. And what that made me reflect for you was, does that undermine the good work you're doing if other people are sort of pretending to do what you're doing? Gemma, how are you finding that on your industry, where you mentioned a moment ago, which is why I'm coming straight to you, because you've basically obviously read this, you say, people say, oh yes, we're doing all these things, and the question is how much, and there you are mostly doing this, as much as you possibly can, and how do you feel about that?
I think, it's quite a hard one to, I don't know how, it makes you, I'm quite a strong kind of minded person, so I will do it no matter what, and I think that's kind of, it comes across in when I'm designing or anything like that. So if I'm passionate about something, I go through with it. But it is one of those things when you do see the bigger companies, promoting things, and I see things, on sort of listening to podcasts and things like that. And it is one of those where I'm like, yeah, but are you? But how much are you actually doing? And it does get to you a little bit. But if I made that really get to me, it's about making, like, obviously so many of us sort of push forward to these big companies and be like, no, like, you need to definitely do something, rather than just kind of doing a small amount. Go for it. Well, it's one that it's quite a hard one, that one is, because I know that we're not there in kind of our industry at the moment. But
Trystan, you got anything on this one?
Listen, mate, this is kind of greenwashing everywhere. I tend not to. There's a lot of talk about greenwashing. I'm kind of not that troubled by it, because I think our job is to kind of focus on what we can do ourselves rather than criticise other people for what they're doing. But I think especially from a corporate perspective, especially if you're a corporate who especially a branded corporate, I think being very, very clear about where you sit on the spectrum, all the way through from I genuinely don't care and that's what I think, right through to we're completely obsessed about this and our entire business model is going to be built on this and we are absolute cutting edge. I think where you can read through a lot of corporate reports on sustainability and they are broadly copy and paste. Let's be candid about it. But I think a business making a very, very conscious choice in terms of where do we want to sit on that spectrum, and then choosing that's where I want to sit and this is what I want to do, and then being authentic in the way that you represent that is a better route. So don't pretend you're trying to do something which you're not, or you're not committed to resourcing. So I think just being authentic about where you sit on the debate and the degree of actions would go down far better, because at least everybody knows kind of where they stand. Then I think that'd be my perspective on that.
Lots of people are trying to do the right thing, and some are being very open about how far they've still got to go on this issue and many others, and other people are trying to make out that they've already got there. And actually, in a world of social media and it's very hard for corporates to. You must find this very hard for corporates now to sort of whitewash or greenwash in a way that maybe they were able to do before, because it's not just the corporate report that people read anymore. It's your actions are out there and people can commentate on them, whoever they are.
I think actually the bit that bothers me more than greenwashing is committing to targets that you just don't have a plan to get to. And I know you could say that's ambition and that's good in a way. In another way, though, it's a way of hiding progress. So I think for especially again for the bigger corporates to come out and say, "This is my goal," and then not hit it and then 5 years later change the goal because it's looking a bit hard, that undermines things a lot as well. So I think that's about, you know, being realistic about where you sit on the spectrum and saying, for our business, based on where we are and what we're about, that's our realistic goal and we're going to do it. I think knocking over those goals drives far more momentum than setting huge goals which actually turn out to be unattainable, and then you have to keep rewriting the rule book, and because in effect what you're doing then is disguising progress, and that is definitely unhelpful. I think that is probably worse and more damaging than greenwashing itself, I think.
Natalie, have you seen other companies trying to claim that their products are more sustainable than they are, or is it so obvious in your industry because yours is one thing and theirs is the other?
In our industry now, it is obvious generally what the material is. Actually in the tree industry, not the case at all, because people claim they're biodegradable, but they've got a plastic coating on it. But yes, it goes down to very tiny molecules. Well, it's still there. It's still there. It can still be ingested animals, but they say it's eco and it's green. So there is still a bit of that. I think there is much less paying lip service to stuff now than when I started in sustainability back in 2008 with my first business, when it was a lot, people had a green range or an eco range just to, you know, oh, we're doing our bit here. Now, I don't think people, as you say, can get away with it. With social media and things, it's just not possible. People say, well, you say that, but actually around here you're doing that. And vice versa. I mean, we did have found it, as Minnie was mentioning, with, you know, the government organisations coming down. We had a charity say, we are not going to use plastic on this site. They filled it full of plastic tree cuts. And they said, there was no alternative. Yes, there was, and we've been knocking on your door for years, but it was change. It was too difficult. I think people are more receptive to change, and I think COVID has caused that to a certain extent, because we've had to change, and people have realised, actually, it's not quite so scary, and actually it can be for the better. But I think there is less greenwashing now because it's not possible. It still happens in places. But
it happens quite a lot, actually.
Does it?
We see it a lot, and that's why the government have had to make rules, and they're very, very tight on greenwashing for exactly this reason. And they're being, you will all be pleased to hear, they are being particularly aggressive in enforcing those rules for exactly this reason. Because otherwise, there's a danger that progress does get masked by people setting targets. They have absolutely, you were talking about targets, you were very kindly talking about people setting targets that they may not actually be able to achieve because they're too hard. I think there are people out there who are making targets that they know they're not even going to try, but it's a good piece of marketing because it's 20 years away, by which time everybody's forgotten they said it 20 years ago. And there's a bit of that as well, I'm afraid. Minnie, what have you got to say on this one? Anything have you seen?
I think this has been really well covered. It's been really well covered. The only thing I would say that we have to also be sympathetic to some extent, builds on what Trystan said, is this is really complex. Two scientists will sit at a table and not agree. You know, you've got the thing and it's made of this, but it's got a very thin coating. It's complex. It is really complex stuff, and it does come down to authenticity and truly people trying to make the change that is within their power to make. And we must try and people who you feel are genuinely trying to do that, we must try to be supportive, not critical. So just as a kind of
I think that's fair. I think that's a very good point. And it's very difficult sometimes to work out who is trying to do the right thing but not necessarily quite achieving it, versus those who are trying to pretend they're doing the right thing. And I think that's fair. But I think we've just got to keep our eye out for the people who are not, because we need to make sure we don't buy their products, I suppose.
Indeed.
So I mean, we're running out of time now. So maybe if we'll just have a last word from each of you on something, anything on what we've talked about. If there's anything last messages for our audience as to anything to do with sustainability or design. Minnie, we just come to you, so why don't we go back to you for...
Yeah, and this is something that the lovely Phoebe English, who I've mentioned, when she was inspiring everyone with her work, there was one point when she said, sometimes it does feel overwhelming. You know, I feel my little business, I just feel like we're a little drop. And it reminded me of a quote I love from the Dalai Lama, my message to every designer listening, his quote, which is, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. So every person making whatever difference they can matters.
Trystan?
Ooh, then tough question to finish. I just would echo the point that was made around, you know, if you're sat around a table or you're sat in a design studio or whatever, imagine Planet Earth was sat in one of the chairs. I think that's brilliant. That forces you to think. what we're planning to say about this decision. I think there's a lot in there. I've not heard that before, but I think that's excellent. So I'll be taking that away. So
You'll be mentioning that to your team.
Yeah.
Gemma?
Yeah, I think both, you've said two very good things, that one just, and saying about overwhelming and feeling like a little, that's me. I feel like that sometimes when I'm trying to be like, this is what we've got to be doing, this is what we've got to be doing. But I think it is very much, we are going the right way, and I feel like even sitting here doing a podcast talking about sustainability, I think it is going the right way, because a few years ago, not even about 5 years ago, would we have been doing this? So it shows that actually we are, as sort of a world, is doing something, but we just need to keep doing that.
And you might feel overwhelmed, but you're making a success of it, so you are living proof that you can feel overwhelmed but still make a difference.
Right, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I definitely try to promote everything about sustainability in what I do. So yeah.
Good for you. Last word, Natalie.
Mine's quite simple. I'd say believe in what you do, because if you believe in it, you believe you can make a difference, then you can.
Excellent. Wise words to finish with. Thank you very much to all of you for joining me today on this podcast, and thanks to you for listening.
Thanks for joining Gowling WLG for this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our website at gowlingwlg.com for more useful insights and resources. And don't forget to subscribe to ensure you join us for our next episode.